views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good morning, everyone. District Manager of Community Board.
Morning, Ralph Acevedo, Community Board.
Marisol Halpern, the Director of Borough Operations for Borough President.
In the gallery over here, starting here. You, sir. And over here, starting that in. You, sir. You. Yes. Okay. Well, the reason that there's so much transit folks are here with us. Who's driving the trains? No. Okay. So let's just get started. Pursuant to Chapter 4, Section 85, and Chapter 69, Section 2706 of the New York City Charter, a joint meeting of the Bronx Borough Service Cabinet and Bronx Borough Board will take place here today, January 6, 2019, starting at 9:15 at 851 Grand Concourse here in the Grand Rotunda. We'll begin our agenda with a presentation from, basically an update on the Bronx Bus Redesign Network, a presentation. I'm really bad with names, so everybody knows that by now, right? Okay, so I'm gonna butcher some names even though I just heard them. Dorian Statham, okay, okay. Director of Bronx Bus Network Redesign Operations Planning, and Ryan Zaitlin, Senior Transportation Planner, Bronx Bus Network Redesign Operations Planning, and a friend to the Bronx for a very long time, Jacqueline Carter, Director of Government and Public Relations. I guess applause is required and necessary. Thank you so much. New York City Transit Authority. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for inviting us back. No, I did not get a promotion. I'm still assistant director. Not yet.
I love it. That's fine.
Didn't get a promotion.
We're
but,
speaking it into existence,
thank
unless the
you.
director's here.
We want to thank you very much for allowing us to come back. Can you hear me? Because I didn't want to move the mic, but you're good?
Use the mic.
For the
Bring it
camera.
closer to me.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
We want to definitely thank you very much for inviting us back. Yes, as you always know, when I come, I bring the people who'll be able to answer any questions that you may have. So I just want to start by saying thank you very much, Deputy Borough President, for inviting us back, all of her staff, who I absolutely adore, all of the district managers, all the chair folks. I just want to thank you so much for allowing us to come back again. Why do we come back? Because as many as you may know, back in September the 5th of last year, we actually came and we spoke to you about this Fast Forward Bronx Bus Network redesign. Everybody was like, what was that all about? And as many of you probably remember, that back in May of 2018, our New York City Transit President, Andy Byford, introduced the MTA Fast Forward Plan. And as part of that plan, he talked about the reimagining of the bus networks. And I was very happy that we were able to come back to be able to tell you that after they did Staten Island, the Bronx was next. So once we came back and we spoke about that, then since we've done the presentations, many of you know that we participated in many different steps, and that's why I have Dorian and Ryan here today that is basically going to explain exactly what we've done since we spoke to you back in September. But before they begin, I want to thank each one of you in the room because every one of you participated, either coming out, either advertising, either shouting it out. I just want you to know we truly appreciated what you did because after all, this is your borough. These are your buses. These are your constituents, and the whole idea is that at the end of this journey, that I want all of you to be very proud of what you've done to help us do this. So before I turn it over to Dorian and also to Ryan, I'd like my team that I brought here today to reintroduce themselves again, starting with my colleague Kate. So Kate is basically what we would call our project manager in government community relations. So not only does all the other tasks that she does, she's also responsible of working with me to make sure this Bronx redesign works. Next to her, I want those gentlemen to introduce themselves because I want you to know what they do, starting with Mike Rybosh. Got to use the mic because they record this.
Good morning again. Michael Rybosh, Vice President of Operations, New York City Transit.
Joe?
Joe Rodriguez, Department of Buses, Bronx Road Control.
Morning, once again, Larry Rivers, AGM Bronx Road Operations.
These are the gentlemen that I call on when you have any concerns, complaints about the buses that operate. Their responsibility of the buses that are in this borough. So I want to turn this over to Dorian and to Ryan so they can show you exactly what we've done since the last time you saw us last year. Dorian?
Good morning. So when we came to talk to you in September, we really focused on the Fast Forward Plan, and one of the 4 pillars of the Fast Forward Plan is reimagine the bus network, which is what we're going to talk about today, what we're doing in the Bronx. So what have we done? Really for this presentation, there's 4 parts that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the workshops that we did, what we found out from the workshops. Also, the surveys we did 2 types of surveys. We did in-person surveys, but we also had an online survey. After that, I will talk about our existing conditions report, which we're going to release later this month. And then the last thing I want to talk about, or we'll talk about, is the updated timeline for the project moving forward.
So as Dorian mentioned, we held 6 public workshops at various locations in the Bronx. In these workshops, we ran participants through several different exercises. We learned about their origins and destinations. We learned about common issues and travel challenges. We learned about their top priorities for improving bus service. And we also ran them through 3 trade-off exercises that required participants to make tough choices. So some of the common issues that we heard from the participants were passenger environment issues, such as unclean bus seats, lack of lighting at bus stops, reliability issues such as congestion, bus bunching, slow bus speeds, overcrowding, enforcement issues such as bus lane obstruction and fare evasion, as well as travel challenges, east and west, going east and west, ferry service, and allowing three-legged transfers. In the priorities exercise, we gave participants a long list of potential areas for improvement and asked them to choose their top 3 priorities. More frequent service came out as the top priority with 25%, and real-time information, bus priority, and bus stop amenities came in next. Lastly, we went through the 3 trade-off exercises. The first trade-off exercise asked participants how they would like to distribute a fleet of 20 buses for a new bus network. We gave them 2 options for a new bus network. These were coverage and frequency. Coverage is where you design a bus network that is spread out amongst many different bus routes, and you have potentially less service on these routes or lower frequency. The frequency network is where you concentrate bus service on high-frequency core routes. So as you can see, all of the 20 buses are concentrated on those 2 routes there in the purple. With that, the response was about 55% for a frequent network. Next trade-off exercise, we asked participants if they would prefer simple direct routes or complex indirect routes. Simple direct routes are it may require a longer walk, but potentially a shorter wait and faster trip, and you may have to transfer. Complex indirect routes may take you straight from door to door, but it might be a longer wait and a slower trip because the bus is traveling more ground and you have fewer buses on those routes. Kind of goes back to that coverage versus frequency that we talked about previously. The next exercise we ran them through was more stops versus fewer stops. On the left, you see more stops. This may require a shorter walk, but a potentially longer bus ride and less reliable service because the bus is stopping so often, in some cases every block. Fewer stops could mean a longer walk, but a shorter bus ride and more reliable service because the bus is not stopping so often. Spacing stops further apart is an easy way to make bus service quicker and more reliable. So now we'll move on to the surveys. Dorian will introduce those.
So as I said before, we did 2 types of surveys. We did an in-person survey, which is considered an intercept survey, where we were on the street in 12 locations throughout the Bronx. We did weekdays and also weekends. There's a person standing with an iPad going up to random people asking questions about how they're using the network and how they want to change the network. So when we went to those 12 key locations in the Bronx, we got nearly 2,000 respondents for the survey. And then also we had an online survey going around the same time. That started in September, and then it went all the way through the end of December. And people could participate at the end of the workshops, but also anyone could go to the website. And I know you guys were a big part of getting the word out about that survey, so thank you for that. We had nearly 750 completed online surveys. So what we found out with travel within the Bronx, people use local bus service the most. Not surprising, I'm sure, for most people in this room. But travel outside the Bronx, people were using local bus to the subway most often. There were also a small number of respondents that we got that weren't using the bus network at all, and they said they would be open to using the system if improvements were made to bus priority, etc. Some other things we found out: why were people using the bus network? Most of the trips were for travel to and from work, but there were also some trips for shopping, for other things, and for personal and business errands. The most important element of bus travel to most people, no surprise, was arriving on time, getting to their destination quickly, and also knowing when their bus was coming. And a big part of knowing that, a lot of that information and knowing when your bus was coming is some of our trip planning tools. Respondents said most often they use Google Maps for that information, but they were starting to use our new My MTA app as well, and also MTA Bus Time, which has been around since 2014, which is really tells you when your bus is coming if you're not familiar with that app and website. And then the last thing we asked were why were certain trips considered difficult, and this goes back to the speed that we talked about before. Trips are taking too much time or they're too slow, but also we received responses that service is unreliable, there were too many transfers to get to your destination, and also we heard there was not enough service in some places.
So this whole time we've been collecting data to come out with an existing conditions report. So what is an existing conditions report and why an existing conditions report? This existing conditions report examines current demographics, characteristics, and behaviors of the Bronx and its residents, as well as the characteristics and performance of our existing bus service in the Bronx. This information will help to inform the redesign of the Bronx bus network. The existing conditions report had two major components: the market analysis and the service analysis. The market analysis looked at existing demographics and characteristics of the Bronx and attempts to answer questions like who lives in the Bronx, where do Bronx residents work, how do Bronx residents commute, besides work or home, what are other key travel generators, how will population and employment change in the next 15 years. The service analysis looks at existing bus service delivered by New York City Transit and MTA Bus Company. This attempts to answer questions like how does current bus service support Bronx residents, workers, and visitors, and how does it perform in various industry standard metrics. So now we'll talk about the key findings of those two sections. The first section being the market analysis section. So some of the key findings were, first, that population and employment, or combined activity, as you'll see in this map, is most dense along subway lines. The Bronx bus network complements this pattern with north-south routes that sometimes parallel subway lines, along with east-west routes that connect riders to the subway and these clusters of activity. The map on the right shows the areas with the highest activity density in red. The next finding was that the South Bronx will experience significant growth in population and employment. Significant development projects are already underway that may require more frequent, higher capacity bus service. Next, we found that about 60% of Bronx residents commute by transit. According to the census, about 44% of Bronx residents identified rail as their primary means of transportation, while the remaining 16% identified bus as their primary means. Only about 23% of Bronx residents drive to work. Lastly, we found that there are a limited number of ADA accessible subway stations in the Bronx. Only 17 of 70 total stations in the Bronx are ADA accessible. Because the bus system is accessible, the network redesign could be particularly important for those customers whose transit options are currently more limited. Next, we'll move on to the key findings of the service analysis. First key finding is that roughly 96% of Bronx residents have access to some level of bus service. The map to the right shows a quarter-mile walking distance from all bus stops. That's the green layer that you see there. There are only a few gaps. Most of these gaps are parks, industrial uses, and cemeteries. The report will take this analysis even further and will show coverage of bus service at different times of the day. Next finding is that overall, Bronx bus service is very frequent for most of the day. During peak times, over half of all routes are operating at least every 8 minutes and several every 3 to 5 minutes. During the midday, 34 of the 46 local limited, and SBS routes, or 74% of them, operate at least every 15 minutes. Next, the Bronx has the most productive bus service in the city, carrying the most passengers per hour of service. This means that the bus service that is offered to the public is well utilized and few buses are running empty, especially in the peak times. Next, the most productive routes are simple and direct and serve high-density, high-activity areas. These are routes like the BX12 SBS, the BX19, and the BX27. Continuing some of the key service analysis findings, the next one was that the Bronx bus network is less reliable than the system average and has become less reliable since 2014. Buses in the Bronx are less evenly spaced apart and are more frequently off schedule when compared to buses system-wide. The map on the right displays bus speeds by color, with orange and red indicating the slowest segments. The red segments are operating at average speeds of 4 miles per hour or less. Next, the Bronx bus network has very close stop spacing. This is what we referred to earlier in the workshops. The spacing between many bus stops is less than 750 feet. Closely spaced stops lead to frequent stopping, less reliable service, and increased travel times. Lastly, most customers rely on multiple routes or subway lines to get around. As shown in the pie chart below, only about 26% of customers use a single bus route for their journey. Meanwhile, 39% of customers transfer to another bus route and 35% transfer to the subway.
And so the last thing we want to talk about is the updated project timeline. As you see now, right now we're in February, where we're going to release an existing conditions report that's going to come out later this month. And Jackie will be contacting everyone about access, but it will be on our website, and we will let you know when it goes up. After that, we will be doing some outreach related to the existing conditions report, and Jackie's going to talk about that. But then the next deliverable after that would be we're going to release a draft plan, and that's supposed to come out in May of this year. And then after the draft plan, we have 3 months of review to edit, to change, take your comments. We'll come out to talk to you again, get your feedback, and then that will inform a final plan, which we will release in September. This current timeline is already up on our website if you want it for reference or just for your constituents. And then at that point, I'm going to turn it back over to Jackie.
Thank you. Show them the last slide.
Want to sit down?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. My guys did well. Before we take questions, I just have a couple more things I'd like to share with all of you. This was a lot, and I know it was a lot. I saw a couple of smiles because I know you recognize in the pictures that we used some of your suggestions. That's why I said this is not just our redesign, this is all of your redesign. You heard that the gentlemen were talking about the existing condition report. I'd like to personally invite us to come visit your transportation committee, your municipal service committees, so we can talk a little bit more about that existing condition report. So if you would like for us to come to your municipal service committee, your transportation committees, I would like for you to send me an email. We're trying to go visit most of you either the end of this month or in March. So if you would like for us to come to your committees, let's get into more detail of what this existing condition report is, and any other questions and concerns that you may have, you send me an email. Let me know when they meet. That's why you notice a lot of you I called and asked when exactly your committees meet. Send me an email. We want to come out and talk about this existing condition report and anything else about this bus redesign. I also want to recognize the DOT, Bronx Deputy Borough Commissioner is in the audience, and I want to personally thank him, his office, and DOT, because as we said before about this design, we can't do this by ourselves. The DOT has been partnering with us. We're going to continue to partner with them, and we want to thank you very much, and we appreciate all the support. They were at all the workshops. They've been at all the meetings that we've had, and we want to personally thank the Deputy Borough Commissioner, and to please take it back to the Borough Commissioner. We want to thank you very much. Any questions?
I'm sure we have a lot of questions. Some folks may need to get their thoughts together, but I just have a question regarding the presentation. I'm sure there's something that I missed, but I heard that the Bronx was the best in the city in terms of something, and then in the next slide it said it's the least reliable on the second side. So obviously that sounded like a contradiction, but I must have missed something in between.
Yeah, so you're saying the 2 points were that the Bronx has the most productive bus service in the city, and the other one was that the Bronx has the most unreliable service.
Right. So
So those are two different measures that we used. For the productive bus service, we use a measure called boardings per revenue hour, which is basically how many people are we getting on average per hour of service that we're offering out there. So this is more of a productivity measure that tells us how well our bus service is being utilized by customers.
interrupt. So you're saying basically Bronxites use the bus more than anyone else in the
They
city?
use the
Based
bus.
on the service that we provide,
Right.
they use it the most.
They
Yes.
use, okay, I
Yeah.
think we knew that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so it's very productive service. The other one is that it's unreliable, and this is in a variety of different measures, such as speed or on-time performance or weight assessment. So these are the different measures that tell us, okay, it is productive, but it's unreliable.
So what I hear you saying is that the Bronxites use the bus most, and we're affected by service reliability issues the most as well.
Yes, according to those measures, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Hi. Just a quick question. You've been looking at the functioning of the network in terms of how the buses run. Have you looked at all at restructuring the structure of the bus itself? Do you guys lease the buses, and do you have any control over the structure of the bus?
I couldn't hear the last part. I couldn't hear the last
You
part
can
of
hear
your
me?
question.
I think Mr. Hall was
Okay.
referring to the structure.
The structure of the bus
of the
itself.
buses. in
Sometimes
terms
during
of-
rush hour, you're standing room only, and sometimes some buses have 2 seats on one side, 1 seat on the other. Have you looked at that as well?
I think he's referring to the
Structure,
size,
The design.
The design of the bus, yes. That's
how many seats, how the seats
Guys, not
are
working?
configured,
No good?
or
Oh, it's not going that way. Okay. All right.
So we have been getting new fleet every year. We do get new buses, and I'm not involved in that process, but we do have a whole group that's in charge of procuring new buses, and they obviously go to the factory and work with the developer and the manufacturer to design new buses. Do you have, I guess you have opinions about
I
how the
just
bus
feel sometimes I get on that bus and there's so many people on the bus, it's standing room only. And I was just wondering if there could be a better design that'd be more
so people
efficient
can
in
move
terms
back
of
in the bus so
the
more
amount of
people
people. Yeah.
We've heard this complaint before, and that's
Yeah,
something that
one other point I want to make, which really is not your responsibility, but I notice all the time that they request that the passengers get off at the rear door, and they constantly get off at the front door, which holds up everyone coming in. So I just wanted to make that point.
We agree that they should
Yeah.
use, and that's why we make the announcement they just use the back door. It's just kind of hard to enforce that on the bus because the only person is the operator who can just make verbal announcements about that. But
Okay.
I agree. It's,
Okay, thank you.
So I'm just curious, is there any, I guess, process in which this plan of redesigning the routes can then also overlap with the size of the bus? That sounds like something that almost naturally should go together.
we have our existing fleet, like you said, we have tons of different buses right now. We have articulated buses, we have the 40-foot buses. I think moving forward, we keep getting new technology and new buses, and that will be coordinated with the redesign effort.
Oh,
but
it
the
is
procurement
part
of
of
new
the-
buses is a long-term process.
Sure.
And this redesign will probably happen sooner than we procure new buses.
Well, what about in terms of like larger buses on different routes, like moving the
and
buses?
that would be something that's considered as part of the redesign.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Mr. Torres? Yes.
I don't know if this is pointless, actually, because I'm suffering today. I'm very hard of hearing. See, Jackie's going like this. So I'm just, and for future purposes, we can have this meeting in my office. My equipment works. And the acoustics in this room are not so bad. The acoustics in this room
Thank
are terrible.
you, George.
All I hear is echoes. So again, somebody who suffers from hearing loss, as I do, this is terrible. My question on the buses is that I agree that this is necessary. We need to have this conversation. My concern, especially in light of what's going on with the MTA, how do we take your word that this is done in the best interest of Bronxites? Because when you talk about efficiency, you're also talking about cutting back services. I noticed on the maps that you gave us, most of the bus lines in the Bronx, again, just from my observation, go north-south. They don't go crosstown. You only had 9 lines that went east-west. If you look at districts in the northern Bronx, Riverdale, Woodlawn, Wakefield, Co-op City, all of them go north-south. None of them go east-west. So again, are you looking at that? Because on your maps you say we want more efficiency. What would you prefer, direct routes or more frequency and stuff like that? Again, my concern is the cutting back of the level of service, especially in transit deserts, which is my district is. But also, how do you, I think we should be increasing services. We should be adding lines where currently none exists. That's basically my point.
2 things. I would say it's in terms of efficiency, the measure we were just talking about is productivity. We're saying that people are really utilizing the Bronx network the way it is. So in that way, there's not a lot of changes that should be made in terms of efficiency because people are, like I said, using the system the way it is. But also in terms of coverage, that map that we showed here is showing that the majority of the Bronx does have access to our existing bus network, and that's not something that we want to change moving forward. We want to have high coverage and provide service for most people.
And then Mr. Lofton, and then Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Madam Deputy. I want to piggyback off of what George is saying regarding the survey. Can you go in a bit more details? You said you had 12 locations, and it looks like it was under 3,000 people that participated in it. When was the survey done? How long were they done? Is under 3, like how many people actually in those 12 locations and overall in the borough, how many people do utilize the bus? And is that under 3,000 number, is that a sufficient sample size to work with? Because you're basing all of your evidence and information just on under 3,000 surveys. 700 online, 2,000 in person. I mean, I don't know if that's effective enough.
No, so the amount of people who responded to the survey is considered statistically significant, but I think that's just one piece of the puzzle. We talked to people we got the survey results, we did the workshops, but that's why we also want to come out to community boards to get additional input. I think that's just one piece of this, and we'll continue to talk to the community to get more input moving forward. This is not the information we have that we just want to report our findings. That's not the final information and the end information that's going to inform what we do moving forward. And also the existing conditions report is a big part of that, because that really was looking at all the things that currently how our system is currently working. And that's like a 180-page report that we're going to release later this month, and you'll see it has a lot more robust information. And we really wanted to share that information with everyone because we wanted to be transparent so everyone can see what we're working with as we move forward with the redesign, kind of the base level.
Okay, so that robust report will include the 12 locations?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
The 180-page report, will it include the 12 locations the survey was conducted at?
It will include the results of that, but that really is our own performance metrics and throughout the whole system, and it's really based on the data, not so much on the public feedback. That's one piece of that.
I have 3 questions I guess I need some follow-up with. Where are the 12 locations? How long the survey took? And
that will be part of that. It's in the appendix that will talk about the results from that survey.
Okay, and then how many Bronxites ride the bus on a daily basis?
How many? 500,000.
500,000. So you're saying that out of under 3,000, that's significant enough as a sample size?
Yes, statistically.
Okay.
But like I said, that's just one piece of the puzzle.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just add, I mean, surveys are always limited to who will take the survey, and mathematically the statistical number is not an actual full-on sample of but you have to factor in who does the survey and the number of 3,000.
Yeah, but if it's 500,000 people and only 3,000, that's not even 1%.
Well, there's math behind it.
Okay, all right.
It's like polling, political polling.
Okay.
They never call you.
Okay.
I hope I represented that.
No, that was accurate. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Lofton, followed by Mr. Brown.
Thank you,
and
Deputy.
then Mr. Faulkner.
Question, when you move forward with your design, right, are you taking into account the growth that's occurring in the borough? And are you bringing into other players that are part of that growth, like city entities? That's one question.
What Mr. Lofton said was, are you considering the growth that's happening in the borough?
Yes.
For example, businesses,
Housing stock.
housing, and additional stressors on the system.
Yeah, and Ryan talked about this. This is really in the existing conditions report, and this is the market analysis of really looking at the future growth and development of the Bronx. And we've been working with EDC and with New York City Planning to get additional information about projected growth, and that's included in this report.
And in that regard, have you made a relationship with what's planned in the Bronx related to the Metro North stations that's supposed to be coming online sometime in the future? Have you really started to bring that into focus as far as this design network?
So you may or may not be aware of the Metro North stations.
Yep, that's
especially specifically in the Northeast.
Yeah, we know about those stations, and we obviously that's part of our MTA family, and we've been working with Metro North about the location of those and the amount of in providing service in the future. And it is as part of the existing conditions report as well.
That's great. That's great. Good. Okay, Mr. Brown.
To piggyback of what Mr. Lofton was asking, in terms of projections of future stress on the system, to what extent will you project stress added to the system as a result of the increasing rollout of fare fares? And has that stress been accounted on a per line basis?
We didn't hear most of it.
Oh.
We didn't hear most of it. I just said the use is very bad.
Fair.
But as you know, the Fair Fair is a city initiative, so that's something we really can't speak about. But can you give me the rest of your question, please?
Well, what I was saying is that even though Fair, yes, will be conducted through the city, it's still going to add additional riders to the buses. So to what extent has that projected increase or expected increase been accommodated in your projections of future usages?
So assuming that fares will increase ridership,
Yeah, so
especially in this very productive borough that we already have,
Yes.
have you factored that in?
Yes, and also I should say that outside of the process of the redesign, 4 times a year we evaluate ridership on our buses and adjust service accordingly. So that would fall under that as well. So periodically we do check the amount of riders and adjust service, and that will happen continually, and that's not something that is going to stop because of the redesign.
Mr. Faulkner, Mr. Phelps, and Mr. D'Angelo.
I think you already answered, but I just wanted to ask if you made note of the rezoning that took place on Jerome Avenue and what that's going to mean in terms of, because I know you referenced significant growth in the South Bronx, but also I was wondering if you took that into account as you're planning service in that particular area.
I think the Jerome Avenue corridor was just rezoned by city planning maybe a couple of years ago, and so that is part of this existing conditions report where we did look at the future rezonings that they could share with us, but also the recent rezonings as well. So we are aware. We're trying to have these conversations with the other agencies to try to get a gauge on where future development is happening, and we're trying to include that in our plan moving forward.
Mr. Phelps.
Works. I can scream,
Apparently
but
only my mic needs to work.
special mic. And then the other thing is just related to the subways. The buses are really critical because, as we know, there's not going to be any increased service on the 4 line, but people keep moving here and they're moving along the 4 line. So the buses are really critical to growth in the borough. So I just encourage you guys to really take that into account, particularly when we're looking at lines that are heavily utilized that are along the 4 line in particular.
I guess that was more of a comment than a question. Okay. Who was next? Mr. D'Angelo. Apologies.
Hi. Speed and reliability seem to be one of the concerns most riders have. Is the city's plan of road dieting, how does that enhance bus traffic, especially when you're putting in bike lanes and you're cutting the lanes to 2 instead of 4?
I'm sorry. I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that either.
Road dieting.
Road dieting. You know when they narrow the road?
Oh, road dieting.
Yeah, the
Road
city's
dieting.
plan to road diet, I've seen it in certain
Yeah,
areas
so-
where it seems to slow bus traffic because now you're talking about 1 lane instead of 2.
So as Jackie made reference to earlier, we've been working really well with DOT to determine where the bus is going to operate, where they operate now, but also where they are going to operate in the future, and to identify bus priority elements to help speed up the bus. That's a big commitment from DOT and from us as well to really get the buses moving faster. One thing we did find out that the buses in the Bronx are significantly slower, the second slowest after Manhattan, which we were surprised to find out. But so there's a lot to be done in terms of bus priority and moving the bus forward, and that is a big part of this redesign effort.
Have your studies shown that it does slow the traffic, the bus traffic? Or have you done that study?
The studies have shown that it's slower the traffic.
Have the study shown that the road diet slowed the traffic?
I haven't seen the results of a study like that. We haven't personally conducted one, but we do have the map that we talked about earlier where we are looking at what the current speeds are, and we have data on speeds back to 2014, so we can see what's happened between 2014 and now in terms of speed. And they have gotten slower.
Mr. Acevedo.
My question, I guess, is more, it's borough related, but more citywide. As far as securing the buses. Recently in my district, about 2 months ago, I had a bus that was taken for like a joyride for a couple of hours, and it went unnoticed, and it had a GPS tracking system, and it was determined the bus went to a whole different borough. And I'm just curious what's being done moving forward. So I know that we're trying to improve the effectiveness of buses, but we've had issues with this particular bus, like a dispatch bus, where it's being parked at because of traffic congestion. So the bus is being, I'm just curious, how can someone just get on a bus and take it for a couple of hours and then it goes unnoticed?
Good morning.
I'm going to have Mr. Rivers answer that question.
Yeah, we're aware of the situation. Safeguards are being implemented and put in place now where they won't be able to physically get on a bus without having some mechanism to actually start the bus. And there's future designs where the operators themselves will have to put in a PIN code to actually start the bus up. We're working closely with NYPD now in securing our facilities, and we have our own property protection actually engaged in locking down each depot. As far as on the field, we've had our bus operators, we're talking to them and engaging them in securing their own buses, making sure they lock it down. Locations similar to yours, we actually have mechanisms that the operators carry to actually secure the bus if they're going to be away from the bus for a significant amount of time.
Thank you.
Mr. Lofton.
Hi. Related to service volume, how many passengers does an articulated bus carry? How many passengers does an articulated bus carry?
62 seated and 100 standing.
Okay. How many articulated buses do we have in the Bronx?
I don't have that number available, but we can get back to you with it.
That goes back to what Mr. Hall said as far as the type of service line and buses that we have here. Now, if we have, with your last introduction of new buses, there were short buses. There were not that many articulated buses on the roads here in the Bronx. Is there a reason why that is the case?
Mr. Rivers said there's about over 300 Artics currently, and as I know I've said it a few times, that our buses, is the depots that determine a lot of times where these articulated buses come out, and if I'm wrong, somebody shake their head and tell me I'm wrong. But due to the fact that with this study, we really want to try to make sure that we have more articulated buses coming in. So that's why I said earlier, I need for you to really invite us to come and talk about this existing condition report, because everything we're talking about is in that report. But there is over 300 articulated buses in the borough. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, there's exactly 321.
Any further questions? Marisol.
Just a concern that I have. The Bronx, unlike a lot of other boroughs, is very topographically challenged. So my concern is that as you're looking at the bus routes, keep in mind that we have an aging population as well. So when you're considering removing stops, there's more time that these seniors are trying to navigate through the streets, and in many cases, hills. Recently, we had a detour of the Bronx 13, and it created a lot of stress on the seniors that had to now find these stops on a very hilly, icy stretch of streets. So I just want you to keep that in mind, that it's not always about removing stops. I understand the reliability issue, but we do have an aging population that are very dependent on the buses, given the fact, again, that not all trains are accessible.
We agree.
Okay, seeing no further questions, we want to thank the MTA or New York City Transit Authority for the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
moving right along to our second presentation today. We are going to have Mr. Victor Ortiz, Community Engagement Coordinator, Bronx Neighborhood Housing Services, CDC, Inc.
You don't have a, you have
he's
a
going to
presentation?
discuss grants available
You don't have a
through
presentation.
Neighborhood Housing Service. So we'll just give him a couple of seconds to set up. Yeah.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to come and speak to district leaders and managers. My name is Victor Ortiz from NHS, and we're Neighborhood Housing Services. We help families, first-time homeowners get up to a $42,000 grant, and we're reaching out to the district managers and all the political assemblymen and senators to help us out to bring this program to the community. And we also have a free tax program where last year we serviced about 1,000 people to do their taxes. But today, the most important thing that I would like to present you guys is that we have about a $25,000 grant for veterans. These are veterans who have been suffering from post-war issues that may need help in rebuilding and restructuring their house, their building, to make it like wheelchair accessible, or if they need to rebuild their bathrooms or their environment in order to make life a little bit easier. We currently have about $150,000 that we desperately need to spend. We're looking for veterans that can come and participate in our program and use this money to improve their life. NHS has been in the city for 42 years. We service first-time homeowners, like I said in the beginning. I was a participant 8 years ago. I got 6% down payment for my house, and I'm on my 8th year, my final year of the grant, which I don't have to pay back. And most of our constituents, even our staff people, may want to benefit from this program to become a homeowner. And I'm here to reach out to you guys, especially the district managers. You guys are the bloodline of the community, the center point of the community, to let you guys know that we're here. We're in 1447 Gun Hill Road. We need you guys to let the community know that NHS is here to help the constituents, people that want to become homeowners, veterans that want to improve their lifestyle, and even people who need financial help restructuring their loans and mortgages. So we do everything A to Z. So reaching out to you guys again, we desperately need about maybe 10 veterans. So if you know a veteran in your community that needs help, please send them to NHS so that we can improve their life in their home. So thank you very much. I appreciate the time and the energy, and I hope to work with your community boards to make this happen. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Mr. Acevedo.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Quickly, is the services for New York City residents? Is it New York State residents? Who qualifies for this?
The services are for New York City residents. Okay. So if you're a community member from the Bronx, but if you want to move to Staten Island or Brooklyn or Queens, you can use our grant any of the 5 boroughs. You can't use it outside like Westchester County or Long Island. The grant is for New York City itself, and it's for all residents of New York City. It doesn't matter where you're from. Okay. We are based here, and we would like to service the constituents here in New York, in the Bronx, because we want to keep the people in the Bronx here in the Bronx.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam.
Any other? Yes, sir. If you're a person like myself that never owned a home, a co-op, or a condo, and you're looking to purchase a home for the first time, you get counseling. And it's very important to understand the A to Z of owning a house, a co-op, or a condo. Some people get into a co-op and a condo doesn't understand that there are maintenance fees attached to it that could be of the thousands of dollars. And so you need to be very well educated in the process of becoming a homeowner or a condo or a co-op, and understand the ins and outs and all the pitfalls that can happen to a particular person when you're purchasing a house in New York City. We want to make sure that the people of the Bronx understand everything and get a certificate that they understand what it is to be a homeowner, which is very important. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Mr. Hall.
Is there an age limit on applying for the grant? Can senior citizens also apply? Because I know mortgages are usually 20 years, 25 years. So I'm wondering, do you have an age limit? Is there a cutoff?
There's absolutely no age limit. We don't discriminate. We're a non-for-profit. We're here to serve the community 100% and to, keep the Bronx moving forward the way it is and keep our people here.
Mr. Lofton.
Right. Thank you, Deputy. So if you were a first-time home buyer and you qualify for FHA mortgage, you could still, on top of that FHA mortgage, be able to qualify and possibly get a grant for purchase of your home?
I didn't understand the last part. It's
if
like
you have a first-time home buyer,
yes, you're
get
first-time
an
home.
FHA mortgage, right? Would you still qualify for the grant of $40,000 on top of that FHA mortgage that you just acquired, you being a first-time home buyer?
The grant is in combination with the mortgage. So your down payment, your closing costs, the monies that are needed for the legal fees, the money for the down payment goes into that part. Now, if there's any money left over, then it goes into the, to the loan itself, and it helps you pay down that loan. But for $42,000 for like maybe a $400,000 house is a great opportunity to use that money to pay for the legal services, to pay for the home inspections, to pay for everything. It's just that added cost that was never there before.
So for the soft cost, basically.
Yes, it's a combination of both. I'm sorry I didn't hear you too clear. I hope I answered it properly. But when I participated, I got 6%, and now it's far more money than what it is, up to $42,000. That's a lot of money for a down payment, which is a great thing for the residents of the Bronx.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you, and send your people over. We're here to do free taxes. Thank you very much, and God bless you. Have a great day.
You too. So this is a part of our day together where we, almost goodbye, where we, if there are any announcements, or I invite anyone from any agency in the gallery, and you have announcements of any programs or things that you want to acknowledge to the board, now's the time to do so. Mr. Faulkner.
Thank you, Madam Deputy. Just real quick, I want to remind district managers and community board chairs that next Friday at 12 o'clock, we're going to have, again, a community board conference call. And this is going to be a really critical call because Speaker Corey Johnson is going to be on the line. And this is an opportunity to lobby him around funding issues. So hopefully you guys will sort of talk about the additional monies that were made available to the community board. You'll talk about that. And he'll be on for a half hour, but we think that's going to be really important that the speaker hear directly from the community boards, some of the work that you're doing and why, how the council can provide additional support. That is sort of preliminary to on February 25th at 1 o'clock, the council's government ops committee, which Councilman Cabrera chairs, is going to be holding a hearing, and there will be a series of bills considered that we think will really be advantageous for community boards. One of which is, for example, to allow community board chairs to have parking plaques. There'll be another one that will address some budget issues. So there'll be a whole series of bills which we hope you will have some folks there so we can have a good turnout from the community boards talking about some of these issues. So we think it's very important that the community board, you are called upon to do a lot of important work, that the city provide the resources to make that happen. So 1 o'clock, February 25th, and we'll get you to where exactly the hearing will be held, but I think it's really important that we get a good turnout from the community boards and district managers to testify, specifically to prepare testimony in relation to the series of bills which we think are going to be very important to community boards. Thank you.
Yes.
Good segue into the money that we're given. So on March 1st, Community Board is partnering with Spring Bank, and we're doing, it's called Financially Fit Friday. So they'll be doing free credit counseling. You get your credit report. They'll do also first-time homebuyer counseling. The bank will be giving away two $250 CDs, and to keep you fit, both financially and otherwise, we'll be giving away gift certificates to Riddell's as well as to Sweet Water Yoga. So March 1st from 1 to 4 p.m.
Okay. Any other announcements? Okay, well, the Borough President's Office will be celebrating the its annual African American History and Culture event. That'll be February 13th. We tweet at 5:30, beginning at 5:30 to 8:30 at the Grand American Ballroom, which is 899 Westchester Avenue. In addition, as we all look forward to this time of year, we will be, the Borough President will be giving his State of the Borough address, February 21st, and that will be at the Gompers High School campus for 455 Southern Boulevard at 11:30. And please RSVP for that event if you have not yet received a invitation in your email box. Where should they go? To our website, yes, and you can RSVP from the Borough President's website for that event. Mr. Brown, what happened? Okay. I want to make sure that we're all clear. Okay, so thank you all for being here. I look forward to seeing you at our events coming up, and have a great day.
Thank you, Madam President.